Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a look at self-acceptance and personal growth.
Oh, good stuff.
Yeah, and to help us wrap our heads around this, we've got this fascinating conversation between a young person and a philosopher as our guide.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like we're listening in on a therapy session.
Right.
So to kick things off, this young person right at the start expresses this strong desire to be like someone else.
Yeah, someone they really admire.
Someone that they look up to.
Exactly.
Yes.
Someone they perceive as just naturally upbeat and happy.
Yeah, if they could just copy this person's personality, they'd be happy too.
Mm-hmm.
You ever felt that way?
Oh, all the time. I think we all have.
If only I was more like them.
Yeah.
More outgoing or more creative.
More disciplined, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's tempting to think that way.
It is. And what's fascinating is a philosopher points out that this desire to be someone else often stems from a lack of self-love.
Oh, interesting.
We haven't fully accepted who we are right now.
So we're looking to other people to kind of show us who we should be.
Exactly. And that's, I think, a really powerful insight.
That's a good point. So it's not just about wanting to be different. It's about not accepting ourselves.
Right. And it raises this question. Can we actually change our fundamental selves?
Can we really?
Can we really change?
This young person in the conversation, they seem to think that, just acquiring knowledge or learning new things
They don't think
doesn't actually change who you are deep down.
Yeah. They use this analogy of a building
Oh, okay.
with a flawed foundation.
Okay.
No matter how good the materials are representing, knowledge and skills,
Uh-huh.
if that base is off, the whole structure is going to crumble.
That's kind of pessimistic. So are they saying we're all just stuck with our basic personalities?
Well, not necessarily. I think it's a little more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It's not that change is impossible, but that true change, it can't happen if we're constantly rejecting who we are at our core. And the philosopher actually highlights this by saying that they accept who they are,
Okay.
even if they don't necessarily like everything about themselves.
I see what you mean. It's like accepting yourself doesn't mean you're okay with everything about yourself.
Right.
It's more about acknowledging where you're starting from.
Exactly. Like looking in the mirror and saying, okay, this is me.
This is my foundation.
And what can I build from here?
I love that.
And this leads to this really fascinating part of the conversation where the philosopher says, it's okay for you to be you.
Okay.
However, I am not saying it's fine to be just as you are.
Wait, that sounds a little contradictory.
It does a little bit.
How can it be okay to be yourself, but also not okay to stay just as you are?
I know, right? It's a brilliant point, though.
Help me unpack this one.
It highlights that self-acceptance and growth, they're not an either.
Mm-hmm.
It's a both hand.
Okay.
We can fully accept ourselves.
With all our, warts and all.
Exactly. With all our imperfections and still strive to grow and evolve.
So it's not about becoming someone else entirely, but rather becoming the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it leads us to this, one of the most, I think, powerful ideas from this conversation.
Okay. Lay it on me.
It's a quote by Adler.
Oh, I love Adler.
The important thing is not what one is born with,
Oh, this is a good one.
but what use one makes of that equipment.
I love that. It's so empowering.
It is, isn't it?
It's not about dwelling on your limitations, It's about focusing on your potential.
What you can create with what you've got.
And how do we put that into practice?
Well, that's where things start to get really interesting.
How do we move from just accepting who we are to actually using our equipment for growth?
Well, the philosopher offers some pretty practical advice on this.
Okay, I'm all ears.
And they start with the way we talk to ourselves.
Our self-talk.
Yeah, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are
Uh-huh.
and what we're capable of. This has a huge impact on our beliefs and actions.
Mm.
It's if we're constantly putting ourselves down or focusing on our flaws,
Yeah.
we're kind of creating this self-fulfilling prophecy.
So it's all about shifting our inner dialogue to be more, positive and supportive.
Yeah, exactly.
What if you're really struggling with certain parts of yourself? Does self-acceptance mean we just ignore those?
That's a great question.
Mm.
I think it's not about denying those flaws or pretending they don't exist.
Okay.
It's more about acknowledging them without letting them define you.
Okay.
We can still recognize those areas where we want to grow and evolve
Yeah.
while still accepting ourselves as a whole.
So how do we actually do that?
It sounds great in theory, but how
Right.
do we actually cultivate a more positive self-talk?
Yeah.
Well, one powerful technique is to start noticing those negative self-talk patterns
Uh-huh.
and then consciously choosing to reframe them
Give me an example.
Okay, so instead of saying, I'm so bad at public speaking, you could say, I'm working on becoming more comfortable with public speaking.
That's a really good example because it is a subtle shift.
Yeah.
But I can see how that would totally change your mindset.
Yeah, it's focusing on the progress rather than just labeling yourself as bad.
Right. And the thing is, nobody's perfect at public speaking.
Right, exactly.
Well, some people are pretty good.
Yeah, but there's always room for growth.
There's always room for improvement. Exactly.
So another thing I think that's really important for cultivating self-acceptance is focusing on our values.
Oh, okay.
Like, what are the things that are most important to us?
What do we want to stand for?
Yeah, exactly. And when we're clear about our values, it becomes easier to make decisions that are aligned with who we want to be.
It's like having a compass, almost.
Right, exactly.
So to kind of guide our choices.
So instead of just being swayed by, external pressures and other people's expectations,
right,
we can check in with our values and say, does this align with who I want to be?
Love that.
And this doesn't just have to be like these big life decisions. It can be like the small choices we make every day. And when we live in alignment with our values, we naturally start to feel more authentic and fulfilled.
Which I imagine leads to greater self-acceptance.
Exactly. It's about living with integrity.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's not easy or popular.
Yeah, and that's a tough one.
It is, but it's so worth it.
It is.
And another practice that I think is really helpful is cultivating a growth mindset.
A growth mindset. I've heard of that.
Yes.
Isn't that like the belief that our abilities and our intelligence aren't fixed?
Exactly.
But that they can be developed
through effort and learning.
So it's about embracing challenges as opportunities to learn and grow.
Rather than seeing setbacks as failures.
We can use them as feedback.
Exactly.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And with this growth mindset, we're more likely to take risks.
Yeah.
Persevere through difficulties, and ultimately achieve our goals.
Yeah. It takes the pressure off of needing to be perfect all the time.
Right.
Which is good because none of us are.
Right, exactly.
And it allows us to be, more compassionate with ourselves when we make mistakes.
It does. And speaking of compassion, another crucial aspect of self-acceptance is self-care.
Oh, that's such a good point. We can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
If we're neglecting our own needs, it's so much harder to accept ourselves.
Yeah, and to show up fully in the world for other people.
So how do we prioritize self-care when we're so busy?
It's easy to let it slip.
It really is.
Self-care doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay.
It's really about finding those small rituals that nourish us and help us recharge.
Like what? Give me some examples.
It could be taking a few minutes each day to meditate.
Okay.
Going for a walk in nature.
Love a good nature walk.
Listening to music.
Oh, yeah.
Reading a good book.
Or even just taking a nap.
Or taking a nap. Exactly. Anything that brings you joy.
Yeah.
And helps you feel grounded.
It's about making time for ourselves even when we feel like we don't have any time.
Right. And when we make that time for ourselves, when we make self-care a priority, we're sending ourselves this message that we're worthy of love and attention.
Which we all are.
Which we all are. And that's such a powerful foundation for self-acceptance.
So we've talked about, self-talk, values, growth mindset, and self-care.
That's a lot.
It is. But it feels like there's one piece missing from this puzzle.
What's that?
Relationships.
Yes. Relationships, of course.
Right.
Because the people we surround ourselves with have such a profound impact on how we see ourselves.
And how we navigate the world.
Exactly.
So if we're constantly surrounded by people who are super critical or judgmental.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy to cultivate self-acceptance.
No, it's going to be really hard.
Right. Our relationships can either support or sabotage our growth.
That's a great way to put it.
So it's important to be mindful of the company we keep and make sure that the people in our lives are, lifting us up rather than tearing us down.
So we should be seeking out, connections with people who are supportive and encouraging.
Exactly. People who see our potential even when we don't.
Yeah.
But it's also about recognizing when a relationship is no longer serving us.
And having the courage to let go.
Even if it's difficult.
Yeah, even if it's really hard, sometimes it's necessary.
It is. It's about setting boundaries and prioritizing the relationships that nourish our growth.
Rather than hindering it.
Exactly.
So it's like building a supportive community.
It is. And when we feel seen and loved for who we are, it makes the process of self-discovery.
And transformation.
So much more joyful and fulfilling.
I bet it does. This has been such an insightful conversation so far.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from the power of our inner dialogue to the importance of nurturing these supportive relationships.
Yeah.
But there's one final piece I want to touch on before we wrap up, and that is purpose.
Purpose, that's a big one.
It is, and I think it's what gives meaning and direction to all those other things we were talking about.
I think you're right. It's like the glue that holds it all together.
Because it's one thing to accept ourselves and strive for growth, but it's another thing to have a sense of direction, a reason for being.
And that's where I think Adler's quote comes back into play.
The important thing is not what one is born with, but what use one makes of that equipment.
Right.
It's not just about self-improvement, just for the sake of it.
Right.
It's about using our unique gifts to make a contribution to the world.
So it's about asking ourselves, what am I here to do? What kind of impact do I want to make?
And those are big questions.
They are, but they're worth exploring.
They really are.
Because when we connect with our purpose, when we align our actions with what we believe in, that's when we truly tap into our full potential.
It's like our purpose becomes a guiding light.
Yeah, that compass.
Helping us navigate all the ups and downs of life.
And it doesn't have to be this grand, world-changing mission.
Yeah.
It can be something small and simple,
Something that brings joy and meaning to our lives and to the lives of those around us.
Exactly.
It could be as simple as being a good friend.
A loving partner.
A dedicated parent.
Yeah, or a contributing member of our community.
Exactly.
Or it could be about pursuing a creative passion, sharing our knowledge and skills with others.
Or just showing up in the world with kindness and compassion.
Right. The important thing is to find what resonates with us and then take action.
Even small steps can make a big difference.
They really can.
So at the end of the day, self-acceptance and personal growth aren't just about feeling good.
Right.
It's about doing good. It's about using our unique gifts to make a positive impact.
On the world around us.
Exactly.
Well said. I think that's a powerful message to leave our listeners with.
It is. We've covered so much ground today, and I'm really curious to hear what's resonating with you the most.
Yeah. What are you taking away from this deep dive?
It's amazing how connecting with our purpose can actually, amplify our self-acceptance.
I think so, too.
And fuel our growth even further,
Yeah.
It's like having a purpose gives us this framework to, understand and appreciate those different parts of ourselves.
Totally. It's like suddenly all those, strengths, weaknesses, experiences, they have a context, a reason for being.
It's like all those pieces of the puzzle suddenly make sense.
Exactly.
You see the bigger picture.
And it becomes so much easier to accept even those parts of ourselves that we might have, judged or rejected in the past.
Right, because they're essential to the overall design.
Yeah, like those flaws are what make us unique.
And not just accepting them, but actually leveraging them.
Using them to contribute to something greater than ourselves.
Yeah. So it's not just about, self-improvement for the sake of it.
Right.
It's about using our unique gifts to make a positive impact.
And I think that's where the real magic happens.
That's when it all comes together.
Yeah, when we align our actions with our purpose, when we're living in service of something that we truly believe in.
Then we can truly tap into our full potential.
That's when we really start to shine.
It's like our purpose becomes a guiding light.
Yeah.
Helping us navigate all the craziness of life.
And the best part is it doesn't have to be this grand world-changing mission.
It doesn't have to be huge.
It can be something small, something simple.
Yeah, something that brings joy and meaning to our lives.
And to the lives of those around us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as being a good friend.
A loving partner, a parent.
A dedicated member of your community.
Yeah, or it could be about, pursuing a creative passion.
Oh, yeah.
Sharing your knowledge and skills with others.
Or just showing up in the world with kindness and compassion.
Exactly. The important thing is to find what resonates with you, what feels authentic and aligned with your values.
That's what matters.
And then take action. Even small steps.
Make a big difference.
They really do.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
What's one small step you can take today to connect with your purpose or to live more in alignment with your values?
It could be anything,
Reaching out to a loved one.
Signing up for that class you've been thinking about.
Taking a few minutes to reflect on what really matters.
Whatever it is, just start somewhere.
Because the journey of, self-acceptance and personal growth, it's ongoing.
It's a lifelong journey.
It's about, constantly learning, evolving, and becoming, more fully ourselves.
And I think it's a journey that's so worth taking.
I agree.
Because when we embrace who we are and we strive to live our lives with purpose, we create this ripple effect,
It spreads outward.
touching the lives of others and making the world a brighter place.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into self-acceptance and personal growth.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights from this conversation.
And that you're inspired to continue exploring your own path.
Until next time, keep shining your light.
Take care.